Hello. Hello and welcome, everybody. Firstly, thank you for your patience whilst we've resolved how to make this session accessible online as well as in the room. Thank you for being here on this first day of this set of negotiations. We're really excited to be here with you. This session is aiming to be really participatory, really interactive. Lots of you will have worksheets in front of you. We actually ran out of worksheets because there are more of you here than we thought there might be. So if you haven't got one, then please do share with the people around you and make sure that they can read what Emma and Pamela and myself are going to be talking about. So to kick ourselves off, I'm going to start by introducing our wonderful panel. I'm going to hand over, I think, to Emma to introduce herself and some of her work first.
Thank you, Amy. Great. Hi, great to be here. I'm Emma, and I am the founder of Climate Talk, which is a youth-led non-profit organization where we demystify climate policy and amplify youth voices. So what we do is we make climate policy accessible to everyone. We do this through a variety of different activities. We have a youth-led publication where we've published over 400 articles that are freely accessible and scientifically referenced, all written and edited by young people. And then we have 6 projects. Amongst them, we have a university courses map, which helps you find the right university course worldwide. And we also have our COP project, which is the one that's most relevant for today, where we report live from the UNFCCC conferences since COP26. And we make the negotiations accessible, and we interview lots of young people who are on the ground to show what amazing work you're all doing. And I will pass on.
It's wonderful, Pamela.
Hi, everyone. I'm Pamela. I'm from Mexico, and I'm a documentary photographer, and I've been part of the climate or youth climate justice movement for the past 7 years now. During that time, I co-founded Latinas for Climate, and most recently, Climate Words. Climate Words is a dictionary of words related to climate change. And what's different from the typical dictionary defined by an institution is that each word is defined by a frontline expert. So instead of getting those very formal definitions, we ask those in the front lines to help us understand climate change so that together we can take action.
Brilliant. Thank you, Pamela. And I'm Dr. Amy Munro-Fore. I work for the University of Cambridge in their climate change initiative, Cambridge Zero. I'm head of education and student engagement there. This is also going to be my last ever international meeting as an official youth in terms of UNFCCC, because I turn 35 in a week, which is very distressing. Thank you. But it's really special to be able to be here and to deliver this type of activity that's hopefully going to be really useful in empowering all of you and others to really take part in this type of process. So, given how many we've got in the room, I think we can still give this a go, but we'd like to really give you an idea of who's in the room. So we're going to go around and ask every single person to say their name, their country, and how many COPs or SBs they've attended, just to give everybody an idea of the levels of experience and the international nature of the room. So I'm going to start with probably the front row, work through all the middle sections, go to the right, and then go to the left. And I know Louisa is sitting at the front, so I'm going to ask her to kick off.
Yeah, so I'm Lisa, I'm from Germany. This is my second SB. Could y'all use the mic so that everyone online could hear you as well?
Yeah. Hello, is that better now? So my name is Luisa, I'm from Germany, and this is my second SB.
Hi everyone, I'm Lucy, I'm from the UK. I've been to 3 COPs and this is my second SB.
Hi everyone, my name is Miriam. I am from the Nahua people of Mexico and this is my first SB.
Hi, I'm Megan from the Nunavut in the Canadian Arctic, and I've been to 1 COP and this is my first time here in Bonn.
Hello, my name is Onel. I represent the International Indigenous Youth Forum on Climate Change. And actually, I am from the Kuna Nation in Panama. This is my third SAPSTA SB, and my was 5 COP.
Hello, I'm Alexis from France, and it is my first SB.
Hi everyone, I'm Victoire from France, and this is my first SBS.
Hello everyone, I'm Lou from France as well, and this is my first SBS.
Hello, I'm Camille, also from France, and it's also my first time here.
Hello, my name is Aoife. I'm from the UK, and I was at COP28 last year, but this is my first SB.
Hey everybody, I'm Stephanie from Germany. I've been to 5 COPs before, and I think if I did calculate it correctly, it's my either 3rd or 4th SB. I'm not really sure about this anymore.
Hi, I'm Hannah. I'm from Germany, and it's my first SB.
Hi, I'm Emma. I'm from the United States, and it's also my first SB.
Hi, I'm Lexi. I'm from the United States as well, and it's my first SB.
Hi, I'm another Stephanie, and I'm also German, but I'm living in Australia, and this is my first SB, but I've been to COP before.
Hi everyone, I'm Ismail Kassi from the Kingdom of Morocco, and this is my first SB. Thank you.
Hi everyone, I'm Fred. I'm from Germany, and this is also my first SB.
Hi, I'm Leo. I'm also from Germany, and this is also my first SB.
Hello everyone, my name is Lourdes. I'm from Mexico, and this is my first SB.
Hi, I'm Lindy. I'm from Singapore, and this is my first SB.
Hi, I'm Lorraine, and I'm from Hong Kong, and I was in COP28, and this is my first SB.
Hi everyone, I'm Ben. This is my second SB, and I've been to 2 COPs before.
Hi, I'm Valentina from Ghana, and this is my first SBs.
Hi, I'm Agustí from Spain, and it's my first SBs.
Hi, I'm Anna from Italy, and this is my first SB.
Hi, the same, but I'm Claudia.
Hi, I'm Cecilia. I'm from Italy too, and this is my first SB, but I've been to COP 28.
Hi, I'm Karen. I'm from South Africa, although I am living in Germany now. It's my second SB.
Hi, I'm Tanya. I'm from the United States. This is my first SB.
Hi, my name is Oleg. I'm living in Germany. It's my first SB, and I've been attending 3 COPs already.
Hi, my name is Daholi, and I'm from South Korea and USA, and this is my first SB.
Hi, I'm Johanna. I'm also from Germany. It's my second SB, but I've never been to COP.
Hi, I'm Lawrence. I'm also from Germany, and this is my first SB.
Hi everyone, I'm Ja from Thailand. This is my first time here, and I've never been to COP.
Hi. Hello. Hi, I'm Bern from the Philippines. I've been to COP last year, and this is my first SB.
Hi, my name is Dawa. I'm from the Netherlands, and this is my first SB.
Hi, Joanna from Germany, also the second SB.
Hi, I'm Wasim. I'm from Lebanon, and I've attended 2 COPs as part of the University of Southampton's delegation, and 1 as part of the Lebanese delegation, and 1 SB as part of each.
Hi, I'm Eli. I am from the US, but I live in the UK, and I've never been to a climate conference ever, so good to be here.
Hi, I'm Umu from Mali. That's my first SP, but I have been to COP.
Hello, everyone. Faith Nataya from Kenya, also a part of the International Indigenous Youth Forum on Climate Change, and this will be my second SB.
Hi, everyone. Shimron Kipto here from Kenya. I've been to COP last year, and this is my first SB, and also part of what she said. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Maria. I'm from Brazil, and this is my first conference ever.
Hi, my name is Jazara. I'm from Brazil. I attended to ASAB Youth event last year, and this is my fourth conference. I don't know.
Hi everyone, my name is Mahayam. I'm from Brazil too, and this is not my first COP. I went to the COP last year too. I think it's my third, maybe fourth conference. Thank you.
Hello everyone, I'm Mika. I'm from the Philippines. This is my first SB, but I've been to COP twice, COP 27 and 28.
Hi everyone, I am Ayadi from India. Again, same, my first SBs, but I've been to a couple of COPs before.
Brilliant, thank you. And I think there's also the gentleman who walked in at the front.
Olá, meu nome. Sou do Brasil.
Hi, my name is Ikazu. I am from Brazil.
Excellent, thank you. So at this point, we're going to move on to our first activities. So if we could switch to our next slide, please, Rudy.
Bear with me, please. I have to go this out.
Brilliant. So we'd like to invite you to scan the QR code up here. And I'm going to hand over to Pamela to explain the rest of the activity.
Yes. Yeah, well, you're getting into Menti. So Climate Words started when Valentine, who also co-founded it, and I were at COP26 in Glasgow. And there we noticed that there were so many words that people were just not understanding. And they were key climate terms to the negotiations, to campaigns, and also a lot of those keywords were being used for political messaging and greenwashing. So it's kind of what that moment founded the project. So just to go back to that moment with you all, we're gonna do an activity where we're just gonna go through words that have been buzzwords for this past year, where we've heard them in conferences, in climate spaces, and just in life. And we'll see how many of these words we could define in our own terms to maybe whoever's next to you, just hypothetically, and other words where you might be like, oh, what does it actually mean? So yeah, let's just play along. And don't be shy, this is a safe space. I don't know a lot of these words, and that is okay. We're here to learn. Is everyone in Menti? Raise your hand if you're in. Great.
Can we grab the next slide? There we go.
Yes, so carbon insetting, what does that mean? There's a lot of I don't knows. One I know for sure. Who said I know for sure? Do you want to say it to us? Do you want to help us learn about it? No? Okay, I'll just say it. So carbon insetting is a strategy used by companies to reduce their emissions and carbon footprint within their supply chain or industry. So connected to carbon markets, carbon off-prints, that kind of stuff, but it's within their system, their supply chain. Next one, please. Can you keep me on time? Thank you. Yeah, what is this? Eutrophication? Oh, I know for sure. Oh, okay. 10 people. Wow. Wow, that's. Please teach me. Okay, so just for all of those 24 who don't know it, is the increased load of nutrients to the river mouths and coastal waters. This is basically what causes algae blooms and kills fish, just like the excess of nutrients when it's too much and yeah, the environment can't handle it. Next one, please. Nice, this is a popular one. Cool. Well, we can go to the next one, or I'll just, yeah, next one. Okay, there's a lot of I don't know. Global warming is so climate change involves more than just global warming. It's not only about temperature, it's not only about heating. And this refers to the many phases of extreme weather events that are becoming more frequent and or more severe than they were in the past. So it's not only about heating, is what this word is saying. Next one, please. Yeah, this is one of those words where you think you know because it sounds familiar, but you don't really know what it is. Deep decarbonization is a term that describes the ambitious goal of phasing out carbon-intensive energy sources. It favors renewable and other low-carbon alternatives, but it's basically how can we decarbonize 100%. Next one, please. Cool, a lot of I don't know. This word, I learned it last year during, I don't know if you heard about the Tribunal for Future Generations. If you haven't, check it out, just Google it. There's no time to explain it. But the 7 generations is an indigenous principle based on the Iroquois philosophy that the decision we make today should result in a sustainable world 7 generations into the future. So what we do now, we need to do it to ensure that in 7 generations, people will still have the quality of life we have now or even better. Next one, please. Thank you. Nice, a lot of you know it. That's good because it's a word that's in the text. Cool, so gender responsiveness, again, for those 5 of you who don't know, or 12 who think that might know, is basically what recognizes and accounts for the important differences between men and women and other genders in psychological development, socialization, culture, exposure to trauma, and life experiences. Basically is a word that helps incorporate all genders. Next one, please. Okay, what is this one? I know for sure. Anyone want to? Do you want to tell us what it is? You are the experts.
Indigenous sovereignty refers to the capacity of indigenous peoples to have decisions over their lands according to the practices and ancient practical practice and cultures that they have had over generations. So it's that ability to have the power over their lands.
Thank you. Should we close it with this one?
I think let's close that there. Now, hopefully, what that exercise that Pamela's walked us through shows you is that there can be a whole array of words that are really useful, that are used all the time, and people have really varied understandings of them. Some people know them, some people don't, and that's totally fine. I think what we're really trying to get across is that your voice is valid in this space and that it's always okay to ask for clarification and understand if you're speaking in the same terms as somebody else. So we're going to move on and have a think in groups about some specific words that are really commonly used across the entire climate space and particularly in UNFCCC spaces. So could we have the next slide, please? And next one. Next one, next one, this one. So these two words, mitigation and adaptation, they are used all over the place, really, really all over the place. And I feel like everyone feels that they understand what these words mean. So what we're going to invite you to do is to spend the next 6 minutes or so in groups of 3 or 4, depending on who's around you, talking about what your understanding of these words are. And you can scribble some notes down on the worksheets in front of you if that's helpful. And then we're going to come back together and have a discussion of what your perspective of these words are in your own words. Okay, so we've got about 6 minutes starting from now before we come back together. So over to you. Hello. Hello, everyone. I'm afraid it's really wonderful to hear the really varied conversations. So I'm going to pull you back together to talk about your definitions. So let's start with mitigation. Does anyone want to volunteer a definition for mitigation? And I'm happy to be quiet for quite a long time until somebody does.
Maybe our group starts. So we defined mitigation as really to reduce or decrease an impact from happening. So as an example, maybe this is like to prevent future emissions. So we took as an example maybe that you can better envision it. So maybe switching your form of transport from carbon-based to renewable-based with electricity. But it's really about reducing and decreasing in an existing established system if we talk about UNFCCC context, the emissions.
Fantastic, thank you. So reducing or decreasing emissions with an aim to reduce or decrease harm. Was that the impression I was getting from that? Great. Has anyone got a definition that has anything else in it or a different definition?
We mentioned the 1.5 degrees goal for the global temperature.
Fantastic. Anything else that anyone had in their definitions of mitigation?
I think we had an interesting discussion about politics and the fact that mitigation doesn't strictly mean fossil fuels, or at least doesn't mean stopping using fossil fuels. It just means reducing net emissions, which leaves room for maneuver.
Excellent, yeah.
Just to add on what's already been said, we also talked about capturing carbon from the atmosphere. So we're not only preventing, but actually bringing down the greenhouse gases from the atmosphere.
Fantastic. And I think there was a definition online as well. Could we have that read out, perhaps?
Yes, for mitigation, we had online that mitigation is the reduction of greenhouse gases, so very much in line with what has already been said.
Fantastic. What I'd really like you to all notice around your varied definitions is that there are some simpler definitions. They were simple in different terms. They were about emissions. They were about harm. They brought in regulatory frameworks. They brought in whether mitigation is complete, whether it's partial. All of these are different ways of understanding the word mitigation. So when you're thinking about mitigation, when you're using that word, the people that you're with may have varied understandings of what mitigation means. So don't be scared to ask what someone means by those words, even a word that is used all the time, like mitigation, where we feel we understand it. Right, let's go for some definitions of adaptation. I know there were some really interesting ones that I heard, bringing various different elements. So who'd like to go first on adaptation?
I think a lot of people is going to talk about adaptation and how is it defined normally, but we added that for indigenous perspectives, adaptation has to be in our own ways. So it's what is adapted to us in our cultures, in our land. So, yeah.
Brilliant. Does anyone want to add on to that? Or has a different definition?
Yeah, maybe to add to this, I think adaptation is also addressing something in the future. So not only the current situation and something looking forward, it's a forward-looking process. And also it's challenged a bit more the current system in maybe in comparison to mitigation, which is a bit more working in an established system, and adaptation really can take a transformative character and challenge current understanding of the system.
Fantastic. Anybody else?
Our group also had a keyword resilience, becoming resilient to climate change or the causes. Yeah.
I just wanted to add that climate adaptation goes to show how indigenous peoples are disproportionately affected by climate change. If you compared an indigenous community versus a non-indigenous community, it's likely that the indigenous community has to adapt to more things, and like despite having a great relationship with the land. So for example, I'm from the Arctic, and the Arctic is melting, like my homelands are melting and thawing, but like my community didn't do that. We're paying for everything else that's going on in the world, and indigenous communities have to set the stage, and everyone else needs to follow suit because we are the ones who are experiencing it daily.
Thank you, and thank you for sharing your varied definitions of adaptation and bringing through this really central piece, which is fundamentally about injustice and the need for adaptation to be appropriate for anybody's context, to enable everyone to live justly together. We're going to move on to our next set of words. So could we have the next slide, please? Oh, we can move through the definitions. I think we had really good ones that came out. All right. So the next sets of words are loss and damage. So we hear these words all of the time, again, in lots of different contexts relating to UNFCCC. So again, we're going to spend the next 5 minutes or so thinking through what these words mean to us in our own contexts and what we mean when we're talking about them. The aim being that we can hear that these words might have different meanings for different people, and that's important when we're thinking about negotiation and the meaning of words. So another 5 minutes, over to you. Same groups, you can mix up your groups. I'll leave that up to you. Hello. I'm sorry to, again, cut short what sound like some really excellent conversations on this. So bringing everyone back together. It's really great to see everybody really engaging with this. Again, I'm going to throw this out to the room. We're going to take loss and damage together this time, and that's because those two words are often used in the same phrase everywhere. So, anyone like to talk about what loss and damage means to them, what they hear, what they understand when they hear the words loss and damage?
Yes. Fine. Okay, all right, I'm audible. So our group had more of a critique of loss and damage as it is commonly used. So loss and damage is commonly centered around more of a anthropogenic and human-centered view of loss, and it's quantified in a monetary way what the damages are. So for example, if your house is damaged in a flood, the monetary value of the house might be something that you're compensated for, but that doesn't take into account any of the other ecological damage, the emotional damage, relocation, and the fact that you can't really rebuild a culture in the same way someplace else. So we had a lovely discussion critiquing the idea that humans can even think to quantify things that can inherently not be quantified, like life, human life, nature, and then we got into disability adjusted life years and that other types of quantification and all kinds of great stuff.
There is so much to unpack in there, and I wish we could stay on that just as a concept, but we have other things to discuss before we finish this session. Would anyone else like to give an intervention or talk about? Yes, lady at the front.
Perfect. Hi. So my name is Lila. I'm from Brazil, and one of the things we were talking about is a little bit of what she was saying as well, especially if we think about indigenous territories where the division between the city and the territory is being lost, and also thinking about sometimes the culture is lost because a lot of it is through spoken word or through things that maybe have not been put in data or put into a computer, so that is lost. And the other thing that I was mentioning as well is thinking about the floods that are happening in the south of Brazil. We normally think about the human lives once again, and we might think about wild animals. Think about our pets, for example. So a lot of dogs and cats and other animals that we might see as pets get left behind. And so I very much agree with my colleague over there that when we talk about loss and damage, it's very much from an economical standpoint on what can be written in data in a computer, but culture, human lives, and many, many other things are not taken into consideration. So, yeah.
Brilliant, thank you. Anyone else like to contribute? Yeah.
I think I want to add to the economic dimension to it. I think it depends as well from which perspective you're looking. If you're looking at it from the global north perspective or if you're looking from the global south perspective, because I think global south people are usually the victims of climate change, aka get refunded or reimbursed in terms of climate of loss and damage, while for the global north, we usually talk about the polluter pays. So there's a difference, I think, in the economic dimension as well.
Anyone else like to contribute? Okay, so what we've heard there, to me, is a really, really diverse set of understandings of what loss and damage means. It takes the sort of initial, very economic, quite sort of hard perspective of it and really expands that to really think about what are the generalized, in the most general way, forms of suffering. We're thinking about ecology, we're thinking about emotions, culture, the encroachment of territories and cities, pets, and then bringing in as well these different geographical spreads, these different meanings that people might understand intuitively from these words, depending on what their culture and depending on what their geographical positioning is within the world. Again, this pulls in, we use these words all of the time. We use these words loss and damage in a really regular way, and yet they have these really diverse meanings to all of us. So I think there's a really important thing in here around ensuring that we're expressing what that underpinning meaning is when we use these words, and realizing that it might mean something very different, and that to somebody it really does also mean their dogs and cats, and that's a completely valid and important thing to bring into this discussion. We're going to do one more word like this, set of words like this, and then we're going to move on to the next part of the session. So, final word to discuss, just transition. Okay, once again, I'm sorry to bring you all back to the middle of the room when you're in the middle of really enlivening discussions. But so this is our last sort of singular set of words of the session. So what do the words just transition mean to you? Yeah.
I can start with an easy one. Leave no one behind.
Simple and to the point. Anybody else? There's one online.
Exactly, we have several answers online. One would be, just transition refers to guaranteeing that the interests of all concerned parties are taken care of as we move the economic, industrial, and production forces from carbon-loaded methods to carbon-zero methods. And I'm also going to read another one. Just transition captures how the transition to renewable energy should consider justice in its foundation, ensuring that it is not a business-as-usual scenario wherein human rights are violated.
Fantastic. Thank you to the participants online for their definitions. We've got more definitions in the room.
We wanted to challenge a bit the no one behind terminology, because who defines who will come, right? So we said about how just, the word just, may be used as well, like green and fair. So we are concerned that it's going to be another buzzword. But we think that if we all agree that we are basing a transition on human rights, which includes, of course, indigenous rights, and we all agree that that must overcome over any bias that we might have in our decisions, we could probably have a just transition, but let's see how that can be defined in the future.
I think this is a really excellent challenge, and it's bringing in the point around how words can be used and misappropriated or misused for the wrong purposes. So you can see how an early iteration of the concept of just transition is absolutely a transition based on human rights, and yet there could be a desire to use that word as a buzzword without necessarily fully understanding the implications and entanglements that that requires. Any other definitions? What does this mean to you? Over here.
Yeah, I think we talked about a variety of impacts, basically. We had the principle of fairness coming up. We also said it can also be that you consider, like you make a due diligence assessment also in your change of supply chain. Take, for example, the labor market, like what impact does it have on labor market? Basically take all the impacts of change also into account, and also think more long-term rather than short-term. Yeah.
Brilliant, thank you. So really thinking about some of the economics and sort of business ways of driving forwards a just transition, and thinking about what things people might do for work as well. Any other thoughts on what just transition means to you?
Just building on this, when it comes to just transition, we hear a lot about dignified jobs, and then we don't really hear about transitioning from our current economic systems that generate these, non-workable human working conditions. So I feel like there needs to be a talk about transitioning to, let's say, post-growth systems and different economic systems completely, which is lacking. And I think we also have another intervention here.
Okay. One of the other things we were talking about is the reason why these terms that can be very easily appropriated into buzzwords are used and then become terminology used in legal and binding documents is because it is because it's ambiguous. That is by design. That's not an accident. So that way it can be skewed to basically the side of whoever is holding the power and trying to abuse the terminology.
Really excellent intervention. Huge food for thought in there. I hadn't really probably thought about the ambiguity and the intentional nature of ambiguity in terms of how you can pre-design movement in there. That's really, really interesting. Thank you. Any other interventions? Yes.
If I'm thinking of the concept correctly, I also view just transition as an opportunity for Indigenous sovereignty to be implemented and respected, and for governments to not only listen to Indigenous people about like this just transition, but taking us seriously and not just using us for our perspectives, but actually including us for our expertise and not just participation.
Power, fundamentally. Okay, on that note, I'm going to wrap up this part of the session, unless anyone's got something they really, really must say, and hand over to Emma, who's going to spend a bit of time with us thinking about verbs and phrases used within UNFCCC language and agreements. So over to Emma.
Great, thank you, and thank you all for your brilliant participation. And now we're getting to the really fun part of international agreements. And I think the last intervention was also a super nice transition into this part. So maybe we can go to the first slide. Thank you. Another QR code, another thing to scan. Now we have a little exercise, and feel free to go back into your groups as you go through the agreement. You should get to the first global stocktake via this QR code, which is the final decision document from COP28, as quite a few of you who were there surely remember. And now there is a task of finding words in agreements. A little tip. They're always at the start of an article, a start of a sentence. So just kind of go through, look at the agreement. You will find them multiple times, but just maybe find a couple and also look at the context in which they're used. If anybody has troubles with downloading or finding, let me know. You should also, via this link, you should get to the general UNFCCC page where you can download, and you can also select your language in case that's easier for you to read. Maybe with a show of hands, who is currently on the agreement and looking for the words? Great, hands going up. Wonderful. Great, I can see some just forgot to raise their hands because they were so busy reading. That's fantastic. Okay. Maybe as a first step, I would ask anybody who is happy to read out just one phrase where they have found the word recalling, and also tell us which phrase that is that you're reading out. Yeah?
It will be the second page of the document, the first paragraph, recalling Article 2, Paragraph 1 of the Paris Agreement, which provides that the agreement, in enhancing the implementation of the convention, including its objectives, aims to strengthen the global response to the threat of climate change in the context of sustainable development and efforts to eradicate poverty.
Thank you, and that was a great example as well. Anybody wants to read out something for recognizes, or also recognizes, further recognizes? Yep.
Yes, second page still. At the bottom, recognizing the fundamental priority of safeguarding food security and ending hunger, and the particular vulnerabilities of food production systems to the adverse impacts of climate change.
Perfect, thank you. Anyone for decides? Yeah.
It's on page 13. Decides to establish the United Arab Emirates dialogue on implementing the global stock outcomes.
Great, thank you. As you can see, you had to scroll a little bit more to find decides than the first two. Now, the last one, calls on or calls upon. Yeah. Sorry, I think I just accidentally said yes to two of you. Maybe at the back, just because you spoke before.
Thanks. Calls on parties. Oh, sorry. First, it's on page 9.
Great.
And it's 62. Calls on parties to enhance their adaptation efforts in line with what is needed to achieve the goal in Article 2, Paragraph 1b of the Paris Agreement and the global goal on adaptation, taking into account the United Arab Framework for Global Climate Resilience referred to in Decision 2.
Great, thank you so much. Fab. Now maybe, let's go to the next slide, thank you. You've already noticed how the agreement is structured. It's not too evident and it's not that simple to notice, but there is usually always a title, and then you have different parts, notably the preamble and the operative part. And so you can see the different types of words that are being used, and specifically verbs that are being used for the different parts. So for the preamble, we had, for instance, recalling, noting or notes. And then for the operative part, we have decides that, we have resolves that, for example. And let's skip to the next slide because we have a bit more detail in this section. So you can see that the preamble provides the background and it guides the interpretation. It has, but it has no binding legal value of its own, which is super important to realize. When it is used is to interpret the intentions of the decision makers. And so this links to the operative part, which you can see on the right, which is actually the section that constitutes the core agreement. It represents what they actually agreed to, and it focuses on actions. It focuses on decisions. And as you can see at the end, which I find super well explained, is if there is a direct conflict between the preamble and the operational text, the operative text prevails, which is very important because otherwise there would be quite a bit of leeway for different parties to then refer to the preamble instead of the operative part. So this is just as a kind of guideline to help you understand these agreements, especially for those of you who might be here for the first time. Let's go to the next slide. Great. And there's a great post that I really recommend checking out, which some of you may have seen. It's by Simon Evans, who is a deputy editor of Carbon Brief, and who made this, well, he didn't make it, but he shared these lists of different words that kind of show the variety of words, but also what they mean. So for instance, he explained that encourage is rather the weaker end of the spectrum, but it runs from instructs to calls. And so all of these different verbs have a different meaning and a different way of interpreting. And so we're not going to go through all of them because that would take us the rest of the session. But I do encourage you to look at that and also look at all of those 4 pages just so you can get a feel for the different verbs and what they mean in an agreement. Let's go to the next slide. Thank you. And now we have a case study, which is a case study from the Paris Agreement, specifically concerning Article 4.4. Now, when you go to the next slide, thank you, and also for those of you who have a sheet in front of you, you can see it on the sheet as well in case you prefer to read it here and not on the screen. Can I ask someone to just read out this article? Literally just reading, I won't ask you any follow-up questions. Yeah, go ahead. Didn't see you.
Developed country parties should continue taking the lead by undertaking economy-wide absolute emission reduction targets. Developing country parties should continue enhancing their mitigation efforts and are encouraged to move over time towards economy-wide emission reduction or limitation targets in the light of different national circumstances.
Amazing, thank you. And now I would ask you, go back to your groups that you were in before for the discussion, or feel free to create a new group of 2, 3, 4 people, and just discuss what you think the key word here is. Obviously, there are quite a few key words, but what is one of the key words in terms of verbs that we discussed that you would take out of this agreement? I'm going to give you like 3, 4 minutes to just discuss. Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say should. Should is it's a very important word in there.
That is a very interesting take. I'm just going to give you a couple minutes, maybe 2, 3 minutes, if anybody else has any other suggestions, and feel free to just go back in your groups and look at the text. Okay, looking at the time, I'm going to start to bring you all back again to the room. Wonderful. Were there any, aside from the already great first contribution, were there any other thoughts that resulted from your discussions about this particular article that you want to share? I'm sure many thoughts resulted from it. Yeah, go ahead.
So we had quite a discussion about the should and in how far the should, in comparison to other words, has a different meaning. So we agreed that a must, for example, would be more clear, but we were unsure in how far the should, which still resembles a clear intention, could, for example, be classified as legally binding or as the parties must do that, although it's not a must.
That's a very interesting and very good point. Glad you already went into that discussion. Anybody else or any other thoughts what words could be used instead that you came up with? Yeah.
So this is a big legal issue. If you have something like will, then it obligates states to actually undertake an action. If they don't undertake an action, they get sanctioned for whatever the cost of it might be. So should is the strongest voluntary word that you can use to say that states should undertake something. You could always use could, but it's kind of like you can or you can't, so whatever, do whatever you want. And also encouraging and enhancing are also extremely vague on purpose to ensure that states have the option to do something, and they should do something, but not necessarily the strongest thing possible.
Amazing. Thank you for that legal take, which is very relevant for the articles. Great. Then I would suggest that we move on to the next slide. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, just very quickly, I wanted to say the discussion we had here was about the words developed and developing. It's so old. Like it has been expressed so many times that development cannot go with a single vision, and that again frames it.
Yeah.
Frames development in a single way of extraction of progress. So that's problematic itself.
Thank you for mentioning that. That's obviously another very important discussion that's very important to be raised. We're not going to go into that now, but you already had a very good thought at the very beginning, because indeed the word was should that we're going to look at. And most specifically, some of you raised alternative words, most specifically should versus shall. And the definition for an agreement is that should or ought to is that it means that an action is not required. So like was mentioned before, voluntary, it is advised, but it is not required. So for instance, the parties should protect the climate system in this particular example. Shall, on the other hand, means that an action is required. And it's typically used to indicate that an action is binding, is that parties have to abide by that. Let's go to the next slide. And now what the importance of this particular case study is that in this paragraph, should was not always should. Actually, this paragraph contained a shall. And this only came out at the very last hour of the Paris Agreement finalization. And so that's why you had headlines. If some of you were already involved in the Paris Agreement, you might remember that. Personally, I was still a bit young, so I don't really remember the details of this, and I only found out about it quite a bit later, where you had headlines how a typo, and the fact that it's called a typo is quite important, I will explain in a second, nearly derails the Paris climate deal. And so you had Todd Stern, for example, who said, it's a very interesting mystery why should change to shall. It doesn't happen on autocorrect, meaning that, you know, shall was in the agreement and they claimed that it just happened accidentally and it should have been should. And so you also had, for example, many from the Global South who then, as I will go on to in the next slide, said that, you know, they're not really buying that it's a typo. Let's skip to the next slide. And so the reason why this was all, you know, just came out at the last minute is because apparently the US government lawyers, to their horror, as I will rephrase as it is in this article, they had accidentally approved an agreement that contained shall and not should, which is, as we have just read, quite an important difference in international agreements and in their legality. So that would have meant that they would have been legally obliged to cut emissions rather than just trying if they wanted to and if they felt so inclined. So now let's go to the next slide. And so you had, for example, you had delegates and negotiators from the Global South that then, you know, you have great quotes in this article where, for example, it says the EU approached us and said that there is a problem and asked us if we could change the shall to should. You know, and that was at the evening of the Paris Agreement. So that was just before 7:30 p.m. of the last day. And obviously they were not too happy because a lot of things were already done to get the US on board, and a lot of compromises were. They managed to get a lot of compromises, and they also agreed to a lot of compromises. But let's go to the next slide. And so a French solution because obviously the French diplomatic team was hosting for this particular COP in Paris. They came up with a so-called diplomatic solution, so that the agreement wouldn't be opened up to discussion if the US had disagreed and had kind of voiced this objection at the last plenary, at the last kind of agreement where everybody came together. Then they were afraid, and probably rightly so, that this would have meant that other countries would also start voicing objections again, now that everybody has kind of settled on this one agreement. And so to avoid no agreement at all being finalized at this COP, or to have it extended for days and days, which many people could not do, they came up with the diplomatic solution that it was simply a typographical error, like autocorrect, that what they said, it was put down to an anonymous sleep-deprived negotiating team that transferred lines from one draft text to another. And whilst it is surely true that the negotiating teams were sleep-deprived by the end of the Paris COP, not entirely sure that everybody bought the fact that it was a typo and that they changed shall to should so that the US could agree. And the reason that they were so keen on changing it is because the US, as the US people in this room can surely confirm, is they have a very specific system how to approve international agreements at home. And they said that it wouldn't get through Congress if it contained shall. So they wouldn't be able to pass it. And there's a whole legality behind it. And obviously, in the end, it's the way that the Paris Agreement was able to become the Paris Agreement, but still very interesting and for many parties and probably the climate as a whole, quite a frustrating final change to the agreement. And now moving on to another fun topic as the last case study, which is the language on fossil fuels. Now, we have a couple of examples of this, and maybe more of you remember these than the Paris Agreement. So for COP26, we have Article 36, which you can also see on your sheet that you have in front of you, or at least most people have in front of you. And now we had this article, which was that is the final article that says, including accelerating efforts towards the phase down of unabated coal power and phase out of inefficient fossil fuel subsidies. Now, can you imagine, or even some of you who might have been there or might have followed from back home, which countries advocated for this phrasing at COP26, and specifically the phase down of unabated coal power versus the phase out of coal power or unabated coal power? That's another discussion. Just going to ask you to put your hand up if you want to contribute, because we are running out of time. Yeah, at the very back. China. Any other thoughts?
Maybe also Saudi Arabia?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. India. Great. Let's go to the next slide, and then you can see the headlines. And it was actually India, very rightly said, that in the end said that at the very last minute, COP26 watered down the end agreement and said it wouldn't agree to an agreement that contained phase out. China was also in this group, so that was a very good contribution at the beginning. And you can see that Alok Sharma, who was the COP president for COP26, was pretty disappointed at the end that they didn't manage to get this through. But obviously India has a big national interest in in coal. Coal power relies a lot on it. So, you have all of these national considerations that come out and often come out at the last minute when there's not too much time to discuss. Let's go to the next slide. Great. Now moving to COP28. Also, by the way, I'm rushing a little bit just because I'm aware of time, but if there is a contribution from someone who wants to comment or share something from their own experience, please just raise your hand and we'll have time for a couple of individual contributions. And now looking at COP28. And now this is the final stock take that you all had open at the beginning. And what is important to note is that there were a lot of different versions of this key article, which was Article 28, and then later changed to a different, well, in the meantime, changed to a different number, throughout the 2 weeks in December 2023. And I took this from the Great Carbon Brief database, where they were tracking the drafts as they came out. And so on this slide, and also in your sheet, you can see the version of the 5th of December. Now, does anybody want to read out option, kind of just the paragraph C, like the first part, option 1, 2, and 3? Yeah.
An orderly and just phase out of fossil fuels. Option 2, accelerating efforts towards phasing out unabated fossil fuels and to rapidly reducing their use so as to achieve net zero CO2 in energy systems by or around mid-century. Options 3, no text.
Thank you. And option, yeah, I thought it was quite telling that there was also an option 3 of no text at all. And then you also have the rapid phase out of unabated coal power as well. Now let's skip to the next one. Now you have the 8th of December, which is 3 days later. And so if you turn around your sheet, if you're looking at your sheet, you should be able to see 5 options, although funnily enough, they put option 4 twice, which is what was in the actual agreement. This is not just a typo on our page. Does anybody want to read out this particular C part of the text and how it changed? Yeah.
Option 1, phase out of fossil fuels in line with best available science. Option 2, phasing out of fossil fuel in line with best available science, the IPCC's 1.5 pathway and the principles and provision of the Paris Agreement. Option 3, a phase-off of unabated fossil fuels, recognizing the need for a peak in their consumption in this decade and underlying the importance for the energy sector to be predominantly free of fossil fuels well ahead of 2050. Option 4, phasing out unabated fossil fuels and to rapidly reducing their use so as to achieve net zero CO2, dioxide carbon, in energy systems by or around mid-century. Option 4, no text.
Thank you. Now, I thought this was a really good example because it really shows how negotiations really, are set over specific phrasings, and this can be verbs, this can be nouns, this can be phase out, phasing out, unabated, and various other elements in that text. And now, when you skip to the next slide, thank you. I don't know, for those of you who were at COP28, you might remember that there was a big uproar at the end of, towards the end of COP28, where a version was published that looked very different to the previous versions. And So the version of the 11th of December, which was almost, well, towards the very end, just contained a variety of different options, which started by saying, now it was Article 39 for a while, before it re-became Article 28, where fossil fuel phase-out was completely gone. The entire paragraph was kind of phrased by those, rather weak actions that could include, which, just it literally says parties to take actions that could include inter alia, which just means pick whatever you like from this list of actions. That you may want to take, which could be tripling renewable energy capacities, could be rapidly phasing down unabated coal, and this could be accelerating zero and low emission technologies, reducing both consumption and production of fossil fuels. So this is what it became. The phase out became reducing both consumption and production of fossil fuels, whilst obviously also considering the other options. And now let's look at the next and final slide of this. Great. And so here, this is the final version, which has been analyzed also by Leo Higman from Carbon Brief, where calls on was said as the crucial term. So it is meant as an invitation or as a request, and it is the weakest of the various terms for such parts of agreements. And now if we go to the next one, which really contains the specifics, here we have the very final piece that you have in the first global stocktake, and you still have, it's back to being Article 28, and you still have a variety of options, and what you've probably heard of is the phrasing transitioning away from fossil fuels, and this was then thought as the compromise that different countries with different national interests in fossil fuels and also national interests in taking very rapid action agreed on, or at least found this compromise. You also had a mention of carbon capture, which is notable in Section E. You also had a mention of a phase down of unabated coal power, which hasn't changed since COP26, as you may remember. And now let's just go to the very final one, because I'm also looking at the time. So this is also from the Global Stocktake, but Article 29. And so we have another question, because this concerns transitional fuels. And so it says that recognizes that transitional fuels can play a role in facilitating the energy transition while ensuring energy security. So now my question to you, and I'm just going to open this up to the room, what do you think transitional fuels include? And do you know, or can you think of a country that might have advocated for their inclusion in the document? Go ahead.
I believe that's probably Saudi Arabia, and they classify oil and natural gas as transitional fuels because it's a transition to green energy, not necessarily away from oil.
Thank you. Yeah.
For the same reason, I could imagine even Germany, as Germany, there's quite a discussion about gas being the more secure, less fossil-intensive energy source compared to oil or coal.
Thank you. Do you have anything online, by the way? Don't want to exclude those that are online, but obviously harder. Okay. Anything from the room? Anything? Other countries that come to mind? Then let's go to the next slide. It was actually Russia, which is probably also not too surprising for most people here, that really advocated for this, what was called a dangerous loophole for fossil gas at COP28. And notably, Russia wasn't the only country, so there were definitely a handful of other countries involved. But usually, or often in such negotiation, it is one country, and often a big one, that is kind of leading in this. And so now maybe I'm just going to open up as a final question for all of you, and I'm only going to take one contribution because of the time. What do you think that means for the upcoming COP29, which obviously is taking place in Azerbaijan, in Baku? Yeah.
I would say we have seen in the last few years that the COPs are moving to countries where protesting is not allowed, and that's a very good strategy for doing the COP in Azerbaijan, and also where fossil fuel leaders live and they have their richness and their families. So I don't know, it's interesting. I'm very excited for COP in Brazil. And it was a very interesting opportunity for indigenous peoples to be in Brazil now. So we, like, peoples from the Americas will be moving over there, right? So
thank you. Then I'm just going to leave you with this reflection of think about what it could mean, think about what that setting is, and also obviously what we can do in this setting. And now I will thank you all for your participation in this rather dry part, but I think it's very interesting. And I will pass back to you, Amy.
Thanks, Emma, and thank you, everybody, for your engagement and your own participation. We've got about 5 minutes left, so before I finish, I just want to acknowledge a massive elephant in the room. We've been conducting this entire session today in English, and we've been talking about language for the entire session. There's a real value in terms of we look at all these different meanings that we can all exchange and have a conversation in a language that we can all understand. Absolutely, that's the case. And yet, I have English as my native tongue, and I know I speak a little bit of French and a little bit of German, and I know that my ability to express myself in either of those languages and to say exactly what I mean is so far, far removed from my ability to do that in English. We haven't got time for a long discussion of this, but I thought one way of acknowledging this is to pick a phrase, and the phrase we've picked is intergenerational climate justice, and ask for anybody who's got a different language to try and express that phrase within their own language, and to maybe, might not have time for this, to maybe say a word or two about how they translated it, if it's not an obvious translation. So that's the challenge, the phrase intergenerational climate justice in your own native tongue, and if you can, to explain the leaps you had to make to translate that phrase. Can I have a volunteer to say the words intergenerational climate justice in their own language?
In Portuguese, so justiça climática intergeracional, and I think the thing Portuguese or Spanish is that we would flip it around. So justice here would come first is, I think, interesting. Maybe.
Thank you, that is really interesting. Anybody else? Yes.
I can try it in German. I would suggest intertemporale Klimagerechtigkeit, which leans on a court decision which framed this term of intertemporal. I think the generational part isn't really that easy to translate to German, so I would say between times, intertemporal, and with climate justice, I think you can translate it directly to Klimagerechtigkeit, which is a direct translation.
Fantastic, thank you. I can see some. Go ahead.
Adding my 2 cents to the German part, I think you can actually use the generational part in there when you say generationsübergreifend, which would be over generations, and I think that's closer than the temporal part.
Brilliant, thank you. And I think you've already spelled out the point. I'd love some more languages. Anyone else up for it? Yeah, over there.
In Dutch is kind of the same as in German. It's intergenerationale klimaatrechtvaardigheid. So it's not that far.
Another language, any perhaps non-European languages?
العدالة المناخية بين الأجيال. That's in Arabic, and it's also like Spanish, where justice comes first as well.
Brilliant, thank you. I love the justice coming first, and I wonder what it says about the culture of those places in all sorts of interesting ways. Who else would like to input? Go for it.
I think in Nahuatl there's no word for that, and it would have to be like a translation to Spanish, but I guess I would say Tonatlaltultzin, which means like our sacred language, because that's the way to share through generations the word, and that already implies coexistence with Mother Earth in a respectful way through the language. Like that's the word. So I don't know if that makes sense, but I would say that.
That does make sense. Brilliant. Thank you. Yes.
We're going non-European, so I'm going to try this. I actually had to Google Translate it. It goes to show when you work so much in English, and being Indian, you study most of your school in English as well. You lose your mother tongue a little bit, but I don't think this is a direct translation. It's kind of messed, but I'll go with whatever Google Translate comes up with. It's Antarpedikat Jalvayu Nyay. There's not really Jalvayu is water and wind, but not really climate per se. So I think it goes to show how in some languages you just don't have a direct translation from what you negotiate in all of these international circuits, right? So yeah, that's from Hindi.
Brilliant. Thank you, Rudy. Yes.
So in Korean, it would be 세대간 기후 정의, and the difference is that the word generation comes first, and then inter and climate justice.
Really interesting. I'm really enjoying and finding fascinating the word order stuff. You and then you.
So in Russian it's going to be климатическая справедливость сквозь поколения. So we put climate justice at the beginning and intergenerational at the end. So it's, yeah, look at this.
Turned on its head slightly.
So I want to try it in French. Justice climatique internationale.
Beautiful. Thank you. And again, changes in word order. Yes.
I will try in Swahili. Haki ya hali ya hewa kati ya vizazi. It's more descriptive. There's no exact words for all those.
I find the kind of various forms of description really interesting, like the ways in which you pick to translate and think actually that represents that idea and that's enough and that gets that across. Have we got any more? Is there someone online? There's someone online. Can we get audio online? Also, we are now at time. This is fascinating. So if you need to go, then please do. But otherwise, we'll see if we can get audio online and then we'll call the session to a close.
Am I audible?
Please go ahead.
Yes. First of all, I am also from India, and I just want to say that Jalabayu is the scientific Bengali and Hindi of climate. So that is perfectly all right what she has mentioned. And I would like to mention it in Bengali. Antarjanmo Jalabayu Nyay Bichar. Nyay Bichar means climate, means justice, climate Jalabayu, and Antarjanmo intergenerational. Thank you.
Brilliant, thank you. Okay, so I'm going to call us together. I'm going to ask us to all say, on the count of 3, intergenerational climate justice in whichever language we so choose. Okay, 1, 2, 3. Intergenerational climate justice. And the world spoke. Thank you so much for all your time and attention today.
Maybe just before everybody heads out, a final call that if you would be interested in doing a little interview with Climate Talk, we are looking to uplift youth voices at the conference and amplify your story, your voice. You do not have to be an expert in UNFCCC processes. It is absolutely okay and encouraged if it is your first time at the SBs. So just check out our Instagram bio, and there's a form you can fill in, or you can also message me personally on Instagram, and will send us a message if you can't find the form, and we'd be super happy to hear from you.
While we still have a couple of people in the room, it would be super helpful if everyone could just fill out this survey. It really helps us design better events and more catered capacity building opportunities. And on behalf of the Youth4Capacity program at the UNFCCC, we would really like to thank all of our partners for delivering such a fantastic event. I have personally learned so much through this event. So yeah, a big thank you to all of our partners. And of course, what is a capacity building session without the young people in the room? So thanks so much for showing up on day 1 in the afternoon. And we hope to see you for some of our other sessions. And for all of that information, you can also scan this code, and all our sessions at the SBs and beyond are on our web pages. So please do engage with us further. Thanks, everyone, and wish everyone a lovely rest of the day and sessions.
Could you comment out the Instagram you said?
CLIMATALK. Like the first part of climate and then talk